I launched my idea, which is known as Iris. Essentially, it's a web app built for international high school students to learn more about US college culture. So I launched that using the Propel program, and then I got accepted into a 2-year fellowship with the Garage, known as the Little Joe Ventures Fellowship, where 5 students in their sophomore year are picked, given sort of $5K in funding, and it's a 2-year developmental program for not only your startup, but you as a person and as a founder in the space. And then the pandemic hit. And at that moment, I actually noticed that the pain point that I was trying to solve with international students translated to domestic students, because now no one could visit campuses regardless of where you're from.
My startup is Unfound. It's an app where people share and discover unique places. It started off as like a text message with a bunch of people, and then my friends really enjoyed it. So I thought, why not make it a website so it was accessible to people all over the world? I launched that from January to March, right before COVID happened. And then in terms of the Garage, at first it was like really crazy because we had like, you're actually sitting in a space with all these other entrepreneurs, and that's really like how you guys are learning from each other. And so going from that to not that was a little bit of a shock, but the Garage is really, really on top of things. And they've been like doing a lot of like experimenting with different programs and stuff to figure out like how we can kind of like bring that community back in an online space.
The Garage was so great. I think during like March and April, like basically during the entire pandemic. And I specifically noticed this when I was sitting in Singapore internationally, 12 hours, 13 hours away, and I still felt part of that community. They started moving a lot to like a more virtual format. And actually right now, all the events have been moved to a virtual format, including huddles with like small groups where like student and co-founders regularly check in with their progress.
I just attended a VC for Women event, which was really, really helpful. And they're like constantly working, listening to like what the students want to bring in new people to talk to us, which is like really great, especially because we can't all be together in the same space.
They've taken a very active approach, particularly towards like programs like Startup Matchmaking and the Tinkerer program, which are typically for students that are sort of entering the entrepreneurship ecosystem, as well as tapping very extensively to their existing network and promoting or encouraging students that are currently part of the Garage to sort of refer or share any names of friends that they know that are in younger years that might be interested.
They also came out with a really cool podcast, not just for like Northwestern students, but I think all students kind of like in the same headspace, in that like demystifying what's after college, which has been really nice as well, because you know, you don't really have access to people who are about to be graduating or recent grads and learning like what it really is like being like in a career and having your dream career. So that podcast I think has been like an awesome addition to the Garage as well.
I think it's just great because like there's so many like mentors and people involved in the Garage who know so much, and you don't realize how much they know until they start talking just casually, and you're like, wow, I feel like I should be taking notes of everything, which is like truly inspiring people. And I feel like those kind of things come up in conversation when you're physically with someone, but obviously with the pandemic, that's not really possible. So I think this podcast is a really great way to kind of gain those small, really cool insights that each person has and try to see how much you can learn from that.
When I was a freshman, the Garage seemed really intimidating and really exclusive. But once you really take a step forward and enter like the ecosystem in some form of another, you'll realize that it is some of the most like welcoming, warm, and supportive people ever. So I would say like, don't be afraid to like reach out to someone in the Garage or take, you know, the first step.